physical world is a classroom for spiritual development. The more you evolve and develop spiritually, the less burdened you will be by the physical world. And so when you said we're wired for this negative bias, I think you said something like that. The real wiring is the fear of death. We fear judgment, we fear being alone, we fear dying. Instead of being influenced by other people, when someone feels not worthy, quite often they will not trust themselves. And when you don't trust yourselves, you hand your power away to outside influences.
Hello and welcome to the Real Success Show. Have you heard terms like blockchain, cryptocurrencies, the world is ending and we need to get investing in all of these kind of assets? Wow. I'm speaking to John Templeton today, who's going to simplify what cryptocurrencies are for the rest of us. But before we jump into it, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so more people can find us. Now, here's John Templeton. How are you, John?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Real Success Show.
It's okay. My pleasure.
Great. I was actually doing so much of just like Instagram stalking today. Like I was just like going and going and going. And I love your outlook. I love, I want to say how unapologetic you are in a world whereby I feel like a lot of people are afraid to speak their minds. So have you always been this way?
I have. I definitely have. I mean, I was a rebellious child for sure. I got expelled from school, so I've always run my own race and been very focused on like my belief systems. So yeah, for sure.
Wow. So when you got expelled from school, how did your parents react? Were they like, "Oh, that's just John," or they were like, "John," you know?
Honestly, so my parents like split up when I was 2. My dad, like I lived in England until I was 10, and then my mum moved to New Zealand and I moved with her. So when I moved to New Zealand, I love my mum, I love my dad, but my mum wasn't like there. She wasn't like there. So she would drink, she would smoke, she would gamble. She wasn't really there. And so I started to lose, just like go on the wrong path, right? I started to go on the wrong path. So when that happened, I can't really remember it. I got expelled first, and then I just can never remember really my mum being there. So I got expelled, and then I went back to for like 3 days. Then I went back to school. I was naughty again, and then I got suspended. And it was kind of like, you know, sort your life out. But there was nothing. There wasn't really nothing. I was kind of on my own.
And when you were on your own, because I think like, you know, those formative years are very interesting years. I was just watching the documentary with Will Smith, and he's going into this reflection, you know, getting his best body. But he speaks about like these ages where he was like 9 and he was like just before 12, where he said like those are really the things that he's been living out in his adult life. And so for you in that period, are there any belief systems you adopted? Was there anything you started really, a story you started telling yourself, I'd say?
Yeah, when I moved to New Zealand from England, life changed. In England, I was a really good football player. Obviously, I was British, so I played soccer, football, and I played at a really high level. When I moved to, and my dad was really supportive of my football. So he was like, he would take me to my games. He would stand on the sideline if it was like rain or hail. My mum wouldn't really take me, and if she did, she'd drop me off and she'd leave. When I moved to New Zealand, I didn't have the influence of my dad. And so my football, it was like I had to walk to training. It just got harder, and for a kid, it was not easy for me to keep playing football. And so I just remember when I moved to New Zealand, I wasn't supported the same way I was when I was in England, and I absolutely started hanging around with the wrong people. And you know, that period of our life is when you're trying to be cool, you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to find your group to fit in with. And there's like the geeky kids, they all hang out together, and then there's, you know, different groups. And I started to go with the group that did the drugs like that. I was like, they're the cool kids, they're tough, they're strong. You know, we were young and they were getting tattoos. I'm talking like 11, 12 years old, and they were getting tattoos. And I was like, you know, they would have the woman hanging around them. And so I wanted to be cool. And so I tried to fit in with that group. And that meant, you know, peer pressure involved taking drugs. It meant starting fights. It was as humans, we're just trying to fit in, be loved, be accepted for a lot of our life, right? Even adults. And that's where we build our patterns. And that's when I started to build my pattern and my model of the world of who was I? Who was I? And for me, it was like, I want to be cool. You know, and I want to be with the cool kids. And to do that, I have to take drugs. I have to be tough. You know, I did some really not very pleasant things as a kid. So yeah, I definitely built some beliefs that didn't serve me and were disempowering for sure.
And when did you like start turning your life around? Because obviously the John Templeton in front of me today is not that person.
Yeah, I can pinpoint exactly what happened. Like, you know, I joined the army. That was it. I joined the army. So there was one night I'd been smoking a lot of marijuana. I was really high, and my dad lived in England. I had to talk to him on the phone. I really respected my dad a lot. I looked up to him. Very high morals, principles, just does the right thing, and was always there for me, right? And I was talking to him on the phone, but I was so high, I couldn't like, he would say a few words, and before he had finished his sentence, I forgot what we were talking about. It was just so embarrassing. And I remember in my head thinking, how have I turned out like this? And how is my dad, like, he cares about me, he rings me, but it's like I don't care. It's like I don't even care about myself. And I remember hanging up the phone going, this is not okay. I have to do something with my life. It was late at night. I went to bed. I had no idea what I was going to do. The next day I woke up and, you know, a stroke of luck, call it God. It was a synchronicity. I called a friend of mine I hadn't spoken to in about 3 months, or maybe even longer, 6 months. And he said that he was joining the army. And I said to him right there and then, I said, give me the number, I'll join as well. He's like, I said, I'll join right now. And he said, you're a drug addict. There's no way you're joining the army. And you don't challenge me because I'll win. So I said, give me the number. I hung up from him. I phoned the army recruiter and I signed up. My mum took me to do the like cognitive testing, and I got accepted. And I went to join the army with that friend. The night before, we got blind drunk, and I actually punched a friend of mine and broke my arm. I've got really skinny feminine wrists. So like, so I broke my arm. So I couldn't go in then, but that's when my life started turning around, because the army, it gives people a platform. It's like you get graded. So, you know, when you're shooting, they'll give you a score. So you've got this system where you can try and be better and better and better. You've got a fitness test, and you've got a 2.4 kilometer run is the sort of the core of the fitness test, and you get timed. And so you're then comparing yourself to other men and you know, and women, and trying to win. And so the military gave me this platform of like, let's see how good you are against other people. And being competitive it just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. And I started to top my courses and I excelled. There's that saying by Einstein, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you know, I don't know the exact quote, but you get what I'm saying. It's not, a fish can't climb a tree, right? So in school, it just wasn't my jam. Get me doing physical activity, game changer. So that's when I really started to come into my own, find myself. And, you know, you say turned my life around. It really did. It really did. Everything changed in the military.
And how old were you, and how long were you in the military for?
Yeah, I joined when I was 17. I was meant to join like a month after my 17th birthday, but I broke my arm and I went in the next intake, which was 3 months later. And I was in for 7 years. So I joined in 2003. I left in 2010. And, you do basic training for 6 months. And then I went on infantry corps training. And then I went and did some specialist training, and, the years went by. And then in 2007, I went to East Timor and did 7 months in East Timor on operations. And while I was over there, actually, my life took another huge shift. In fact, I tell everyone this is where my personal development journey started. The army, I didn't know I was personal developing. It was just kind of like, go run up that hill, go shoot that gun. But I got better at life, right? I got stronger, fitter, tougher mentally. But in East Timor, there was times it was boring. We had like hours of free time. And so someone gave me this book, and it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you've heard of it. I'm sure anybody listening or watching has heard of it. And I was like, finance, not really my thing, but I'll read it. And I read it. And this was the first time I understood what a paradigm shift was. Up until then, I just lived my life, didn't really have much awareness of what was going on. I read that book, and I literally looked at money differently after reading it. And that was the first experience I had where it was like, okay, I'm doing this money thing wrong. If I wanted to be wealthy, I'm doing this money thing wrong. So when I got back from East Timor, I came back with a lump of money, because obviously we couldn't spend much there. We were sleeping in bloody mosquito nets and eating food that was just given to us. So I didn't spend much money, came home with a lump. And because of my programming from childhood, I wanted to buy a fast car. I wanted to be the cool kid. I wanted the sound system. Like, that's what I wanted. I read the book and I realized that was a dumb move, John. So I actually bought a house. I came home and I bought a house. I just went to the house shop, known as a real estate agent, went to the house shop, asked if I could buy a house, bought a house. And within 6 months of partying, getting drunk and destroying the house, I said, look, this house thing, it's not for me. And I sold it, and I made about $30,000 profit. And for a 21-year-old, that was pretty good. So a 21-year-old soldier as well. And that's really when the personal development bug bit. I went, wait a minute, I read one book, and I just made $30,000 where I could have spent it on a car and lost money. I was like, this reading business is something I have to get into. So I bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad 2. I bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad Guide to Investing. So I started in that wealth space. With that money, I took 1 year's leave from the military, and I went back to the UK to see my dad, but I took a year off and I just traveled around the world. I reinvested in another house. And so it was like, it's incredible. Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, really, really, really is like, when you look back at your life and you see those definite moments where there was a definite shift, that was one of those for sure.
Wow, I love that story. And is that how you ended up in the space of the financial world and starting to want to teach it? Because it's one thing to know something for yourself, it's another thing to teach it. So why did you start, speaking about it, teaching it to people that you knew?
Fantastic question. I never intended to ever. I just wanted to build wealth so I could travel, so I could live comfortably and have the things I wanted. I was a CrossFit instructor. I actually became a physical training instructor in the military, and I actually ended up finishing my career as the physical training instructor for the SAS, the Special Forces. So that's where I finished my career, and I went into then running my own CrossFit gyms and competing at CrossFit and that. And I started coaching almost by accident, because I had some athletes I was coaching, and I realized that it wasn't the training, it wasn't the nutrition, it was their mindset. It all came down to their mindset. And I was like, I need to be able to help athletes with their mindset. So I went and did my master hypnotherapy certification. So I became a certified hypnotherapist. And then I studied neuro-linguistic programming and did that to a master practitioner level. But here's the thing, when I was doing my practitioner NLP training, there were about 100 people in the room. And the guy running the NLP training was very, very good at sort of sales. And out of the 100 people in the room, he pitched us all master practitioner, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And it was like maybe $8,000 for this 2-week NLP master training. And I went and paid. I was one of the first people. I was like, yep, I want to master this. I'm not going to mess around. And I just went and paid. But over the space of the week of training, almost everyone in that room signed up. And I did the maths on it. And there was one of the days, I can't remember what day it was, one of the last days, he was up to like $500,000. And I was just sitting there going, I'm in the wrong bloody career. This guy is teaching and he just made $500,000 in a week. He can just go and buy a house now in 1 week. Now, obviously there's all the work that's gone into getting to that point, but I was like, I want to do what he does. And so that's when I went and learned about how to speak and how to coach and things like that. And then obviously throughout our life, we pick up all these skills and they kind of have intertwined into my DNA and my bloody biology. And so I do have that wealth knowledge. And I have the coaching and the speaking knowledge, and they come in really well together. And that's why over the last few years, I've been training thousands of people now with building wealth through predominantly cryptocurrency at the moment, just because it's such a, if you don't have cryptocurrency, I'm gonna like slap you around the head with a wet fish.
Okay, I think most of us will miss that, John. But tell us, why crypto, right? Like why? Because I do see that you've got this passion for it, and I think the term blockchain crypto has been so like widely used now. What is it for those people who are like, please just simplify what this thing is for me?
What is it? It is. Imagine if the government's bank balance was on a huge advertising billboard in the middle of the city. You could see every dollar that the government was buying and selling. You would say that's a good thing. That's transparency. What the blockchain allows is ultimately, there's no names necessarily attached to it, but there's transparency of where every Bitcoin is coming and going. You can't produce any more of it. So there's a set amount. So there's a set amount of it, and it's pretty transparent where it's all coming and going. And the real kicker is no one owns it. No one owns it. So it can't be manipulated. It is a mathematical equation. That's how real it is. That's kind of the simple way of looking at it. To dive a little bit deeper, blockchain is what it is. It's a chain of blocks, and each block, just say a block is built every 10 minutes, and then you have another block 10 minutes later. Within that block is money in, money out. That's it. Every transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain is listed in a block, and there's a new block every 10 minutes, and you can see the block. You can see what Bitcoins have gone where. Now, nobody owns this algorithm. Nobody owns this chain of blocks. But what happens is there's a group of people in the world, millions of them, called miners, without going into detail. And every 10 minutes, they confirm the block. So they say, yes, all of these transactions are true. And because there are millions of people all over the world that don't know each other, all confirming that same block at the same time, you can't hack it, because you would need over 50% of these random people to make the same changes at the same time. It's impossible. It's really impossible. So you can't hack it. So you've got the most honest, the most transparent, the most uncorruptible, the most unhackable monetary system on earth. And money makes the world go round. And so now we've got this pure, beautiful form of like a means to store value that becomes valuable. Like that's so rare. Bitcoin is so rare. And when something is rare and it's highly demanded because it's so pure, it then goes up in value. So it's supply and demand. There's a lot of demand for it, and there's very little supply for it. So Bitcoin is going to keep going up in price. You can't stop it. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. That's always the case. But over the long run, it's going to go up and up and up and up. Within our lifetime anyway.
I mean, I know with a lot of people who hear about like cryptocurrencies, there's been so many scams. It's unregulated, which is what people are the most afraid of, right? There's no real regulating commission for it at this time. But another thing is like, I just recently read that there was a Squid Games coin that was like released, that then like the people completely ran away, and they made millions, right? But they left most of these people like in the lurch. So all these unregulated coins that come into the market, how do people identify what is a real coin? I mean, we're all familiar with Bitcoin, the term, but we're not familiar with like, maybe now people know Ethereum or anything like that. But how do you trust which coins you should trust?
Yeah. Don't trust you can trust the coin, you can't trust the people. So nobody has been scammed by Bitcoin. They've been scammed by people. So Bitcoin it's an innate system. It is the people that is scamming you. So yeah, to come back to the question, how do you know which coins are? You have to research them. You have to research them. Bitcoin has been around long enough now that it's officially an asset class. You literally can't stop it, and it's becoming regulated as we speak. The other coins, like I hit the Squid Game coin, it's not pleasant if you got ripped off. But you should learn a lesson from that. You should learn a lesson to do your research. We've all lost in our life, whether it's we've lost love, we've lost money, we've lost something, right? Lost our health. And we learn a lesson so that we don't do it again in the future. There are lots of people out there looking for a quick buck. Go to the official website and read the white paper, and then research the team behind it. That's what you need to do. You just, like anything, due diligence is the key.
And I know with anything like this, it's all about, like, we always get our classes of people who are the early adopters. Then we get the middle people who are like, okay, they didn't die, I think I'll try. And then you get the late adopters who are like, I'm just going to wait until. Are you an early adopter? Did you hear about Bitcoin and then were you just like, I'm in?
I was, but I wouldn't say I was an early adopter. I would say early adopters are like pre-2000 and at least pre-2017, but I would say 2013. I got in 2017 after it shot up. So it shot up and I got some then. And then I got a lot more in 2020 before it went crazy. So am I an early adopter? I don't think I am, but when I only heard about it in 2017. So in terms of how long it took me to jump on it from when I heard about it, it was quick. In general, in fact, when I was doing my physical trainer instructor in the military, there's a 4-day selection process. It's very hard to pass. Over those 4 days, you don't eat much food at all. You don't sleep really at all. And you're just blasted with your physical training. I'm talking all around the clock until your body is just a mess. And I got hypothermia 2 times in those 4 days, and I got hypothermia 1 time. And so I was like a shell of a human, just obliterated, and I had to keep going. And there was one activity, I literally had just jumped in this dam in my underwear, and we had to look for a kind of like a bottle at the bottom of the dam. We had to dive under and try and get the bottle, and the bottle had a map in it for the next destination we had to navigate to. And we were diving. There was only 2 of us left at this stage. So only 2 of us ended up finishing it. And we couldn't find the bottle, and the instructors called us out of the water. And I was like so cold I could barely function. And they threw me in the back of this van and put the heaters on and gave me a cup of tea. And I was like an absolute mess. And then we had to go to where the dam was holding the water in. We had to go to the top of the dam. We had to read some instructions, and we had to create an abseiling rig to abseil down the side of the gym. Now, my mind was not completely there, but I rigged up this thing from what I thought was the rigging on the instructions. And the instructor said, "Are you ready to abseil down?" I was like, "Yep, let's go." And he lost it at me. He's like, you'll fucking die. He's like, if you do this, you'll die. He's like, you haven't built this properly. And so he just said, my risk level is way too high. He's like, because the more you risk, the more dangerous you are. And so as an instructor, you need to be kind of like, safety is pretty important if you're taking any students or soldiers through a training. And so I got really low marks for my safety because I took such huge risks. So yeah, I've definitely dove in head first, but it's also served me well. I definitely get beaten up and wrecked. I've lost a lot of money in real estate deals because I haven't done my due diligence. I've probably dove into relationships too quickly. I've probably dove into bloody shark infested waters. Probably, I've probably done things without thinking, but it's a double-edged sword because cryptocurrency paid off. Even in business, it's like just taking those risks, taking a leap, even if you can't see the bottom or see the ground. Yeah, I really believe if you want to win big, you got to risk big.
It sounds like when we measuring like the risk, a scale of like those who are completely risk averse and those who are like completely in the risk. You are obviously on the one extreme end, and most people on the complete other end. So with NLP and with your coaching and teaching, is there a way to bring people who are completely risk averse into at least the middle ground where they can at least have a relationship with risk?
Yeah, absolutely. The pain and pleasure is what motivates everyone. And so if people see an activity, let's talk about cryptocurrency. If people look at cryptocurrency and they say, I could lose all my money, they're going to associate pain to that activity. And so there's a very, very, very low chance they're going to do it. And if somebody looks at cryptocurrency and goes, wow, I could make millions of dollars, they're going to associate pleasure to it, and they're probably going to do it. So when someone has got like an unbalanced perception of cryptocurrency or anything, they're probably reading too many horror stories and not enough success stories. And so you see that with the news and the media, they just pump out horror stories all the time, and people are too scared to leave their house or, not wear a mask or whatever. It's like people listen to too much horror stories. We are built for survival, right? We know that as humans, our instincts are survival based. A lot of people live there unconsciously, and they don't get to experience abundance. They don't get to experience the fullness of life. And so what I would say for anyone is read more success stories, read more stories of hope, read more stories of love, because to have love, you have to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable means your shield is down, which means it's not safe. To really love is not safe. And so a lot of people are not experiencing true love because they don't put their shield down. They're holding their shield up, even in really close, intimate relationships. They're holding their shield up. So the stories of success, and I grew up on success stories. With my playing football, I would look at, there was a Welsh footballer called Ryan Giggs, and I really looked up to him. Do you know him?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so I really looked up to him. He played for Manchester United, and so I looked up to him. And then when I was in the military, I would look at the Special Forces soldiers. When I was bodybuilding, I would look up to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not so much now, but I would look up to Arnie. And so I always had success stories, and I would read books about people who have succeeded. And I would encourage anyone to almost never watch the news. It really is. If there was a million things happening in the world right now, the news is like 1/1,000,000th of those million. And there's all this other stuff happening that you could be absorbing. You could be here listening to this incredible guy, John, speaking on a podcast and filling your mind with knowledge. You could be reading, you could be watching videos, anything that activates that drive and that excitement in you to go after something. I would encourage you to to spend more of your time doing that than reading and listening to fear-based content.
I love the facial, for those who are listening, John's facial expression. No, and I mean, on the newsroom floor, the biggest thing that you go with, especially as a journalist, is if it bleeds, it leads, right? So sometimes that you'd even be encouraged to take a news story, even if it's positive, and give it a negative spin because people are more likely to read it if it's negative. So for people, because human beings are wired for negativity bias, John. So how do people, you were talking about love, you were speaking about it holistically, like in business, in career and crypto. You know, it's one thing to say, like, take off the shield and like, you know, like take a risk and feed yourself this positive information. But so many people are so hardwired. They're so hardwired to be afraid that, okay, John, if I trust this person and then they shatter my heart, what if I die? You know, and if I take this risk and I lose all my money? So are there any steps besides reading whereby people can like start maybe challenging themselves to start becoming much more like, to live more, I'd say?
The physical world is a classroom for spiritual development. So I'll say that again. The physical world is a classroom for spiritual development. The more you evolve and develop spiritually, the less burdened you will be by the physical world. And so when you said we're wired for this negative bias, I think you said something like that. The real wiring is the fear of death. We fear judgment, we fear being alone, we fear dying. And so you can only die if you don't believe in your eternal spiritual nature. And some people might be listening and going, what's this wacko talking about? And others might totally resonate with it. But the more we can let go, be not attached. I say, answer this question. Who would you be without attachments, expectations, and judgments? Who would you be if you had no attachments to anything, if you had no expectations of anyone, and you had no judgments of anyone? Who would you be? What would you feel?
Wow. And are you asking me, or is it like a hypothetical for the audience?
Both.
Because I'm like, that is a profound question. I think, I mean, wouldn't that be our purest essence, right? Because so much of who we are is like, we define ourselves according to those attachments, according to those judgments that we carry. That, okay, like, so for example, I could be like, I'm Candice, I'm an interviewer, right? I have blue hair, I own this car, or whatever the case is. And those things become so entrenched in who we are. And then it's the projection that we give to the world. But moving through life without them, you're just like this essential, just human, I mean, well, the spiritual being having a human experience. And I think that is a beautiful thing. Okay, so I know I've asked you, you know, have you always been this way? But when it comes to the spiritual essence of it, when did it come into being? When did you start realizing that you're more spirit than, you know, I was going to say human.
So first off, you have to answer my question. What would you feel? What would you feel if you had no attachments, no expectations, and no judgments? What would you feel?
Free?
100%. It would be bliss. It would be this blissful state. And really, that's what everybody's chasing. That's why people want to earn more money. That's why people come to my seminars. I want to earn more money. Why? Because I want to buy a house for my family. Why? Because then I'll feel more secure. Well, why is that important? Because I'll be less stressed. Well, why is that important? Well, then I'll feel good. No matter what way you slice it, people just want to feel good. That's it. They want to go from I don't feel good to I feel good. And so if you could just simply mentally let go of your judgments, expectations, and attachments, you would just feel good and you'd want for nothing. I've learned that the hard way. And you asked before, how have I become, I guess, spiritual? I dove into spirituality by accident. I read another book, another paradigm shift, which was The Power of Now. And I pretended to be spiritual. So I had spiritual knowledge. I knew what it was, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't being it. I still do today. I'm not, obviously there are levels to it. It's not black or white. So I was like, yeah, I'm spiritual. But then I would still, there was money. I was attached to money still. I was attached to my physical appearance. I was attached to what people thought of me. And so and I kept experiencing pain. And if my bank account went down, even though I had a ton of money, I would experience pain. If I looked in the mirror and I was like, hadn't trained for a week, I would experience, when I say pain, it can be minor or mild. And I kept experiencing pain to the point where I literally, on the floor in this room, would just cry and pray to God for help and support. And like, I had to experience enough pain for me to let go of the attachments. So it was like I was the one holding on to a hot coal, and I was just holding this hot coal as it burnt me, and all I had to do was just let go of it, and maybe put my hand in some cold water. But it was pain. Pain was the lesson that taught me not just knowledge of spirituality, but to actually to be it. So that's where I came up with the quote that the physical world is the spiritual classroom. So every ounce of pain and suffering we experience in the physical world is just a lesson. It is just, every time we fail, it is just, a failure is actually the beginning of a new life. As long as you learn the lesson, the failure is actually the beginning. So every time you experience pain, you can learn the lesson, you can transcend that level of mind to a higher level. That's why you see people where some people complain about spilt milk, about the little things. They're going to live a life that's quite painful. And then you've got people like Elon Musk, for example, his problems are, how do I land a rocket on space? Most people couldn't fathom what that level of mind is like. So it's just lesson after lesson after lesson. Go into your pain. And that's one thing I really will say. Go into your pain. If you try and hide your pain by working, a lot of people push themselves in work. A lot of people will work on their appearance, go to the gym, like whatever, because they find that they then get significance, or they can, it's ultimately addiction. They become addicted to it because it numbs the pain, where you need to do the opposite and go into the pain, because that's where the gold is, that's where the lesson is. So all the money in the world, it's not going to make you happy. So don't do my programs unless you're happy first, because it's not going to work. It's not. It's not going to work. You're going to have more money. And you know what? When I hit $1 million, I hit $1 million, right? And it was always a goal. I want to be a millionaire. And I hit $1 million. And I was driving my car and I was like, I hit $1 million. But all of the problems in my life were still the same as before I had $1 million. And I still had the same beliefs. I still had the same pain. I still looked in the mirror and saw this, like nothing changed. And so any external thing is really never going to bring us what we want. That blissful feeling can only be attained through letting go of expectations, attachments, and judgments.
Oh, I love that. And it reminds me of a quote that said, "It's incredible how far people will go to get away from themselves." And I think that's always such a profound quote for me, because I'm always thinking about, whether it's drug addiction, alcoholism, or it's work, like, working, or it's trying to escape into relationships, or, just anything so that we don't have to spend that time with ourselves, dealing with that pain. But what is it about pain that completely repels us? Like, we are so afraid of going into that pain, leaning into that discomfort. What do you think it is?
Well, try touching a hot iron. It's like, it hurts. It hurts. It really hurts. And that's it. That's it. And I learned this in the military as well, which was, there was one time we were doing a drill where there was 10 of us in a section. the two commanders were watching us. So there were 8 of us. And it's a man down drill. So if someone gets shot, it's the drill you do to get them out of there. And when I was in the military, you're probably not going to believe this, but I weighed 52 kilos. So I was tiny. I was super tiny, right? They called me skinny. My nickname in the military was Skinny. So we did a man down drill where 2 people got shot. So out of the 8 people, 2 are down, so there are 6 left. Someone has to carry a person, fireman's carry, plus someone has to carry their pack, which weighs about 40 kilos. So you've got 2 people who are free, not carrying anything. You've got 2 people that are carrying people, and you've got 2 people that are carrying extra packs as well as your own pack. So everyone's got a 40 kilo pack on, plus either another 40 kilo pack or like an 80, 90, 100 kilo human. And so you grab what you can and you sort of shoot and minutes. It might not sound like long, but when you're going as if your life depends on it, it's hectic. And so I started with a human, and I was running with a human plus my pack. And then we'd get to a point and the commander would be like, cool, like change round, whatever. But because there are only 2 free spots, not everybody that was once carrying something could have a moment of rest. And for the whole 10 minutes, not once did I choose to be the person not carrying something. I just kept carrying. Whenever there was something to pick up and carry, I would do it. I would do it. And I remember my 2IC, John O'Green, and he said, he ripped everybody to pieces. And he said, Skinny, he made the name up. He's like, Skinny was the only person that carried something the whole fucking time. The rest of you are, your pussies, whatever. And he ripped into them. And I remember that was right at the start of my career. And I kept doing that. Whenever there was a hard path, I would say, I'll do the hard path. And I kept taking the hard option every time. And what happened, this 52 kilo skinny runt became a 85 kilo beast that then became the physical training instructor and outperformed everybody in the fitness test. I became what's called it's called the hundreds club. It's when it's the highest score you can get. So that mentality of take the hard road, I believe the hard road is the easy road. And Les Brown says, if you do what is easy, life will be hard. If you do what is hard, life will be easy. That was one of my favorite quotes when I heard it. And I didn't know of Les Brown at the time, but I was like, it really resonated, because I used to say to my friends, the hard way is the easy way. And they never used to understand it. But really, it's like you're forging Excalibur, you're forging a sword, so that when you come to battle, the battle's easy, because you've just got the strongest, toughest, biggest, baddest sword. And so the hard way is the easy way. The easy way is the hard way.
Wow, I love that story. And is that how you ended up getting into the Guinness World Book of Records?
No, that was just my ego. So yes, the do what's hard, yes, for sure. But I mean, I was coming out of a period of my life where I was very lost. I was in a 3-year relationship where I was broken. I was in hospital for months on end. I went from 80 kilos to 70 kilos in a few weeks. I was ghost white. I couldn't even drink water. I would vomit water. So I went to hospital. I had x-rays. I had cameras down my throat, up my butt, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I lost 150 grand during that time as well. It was such a hard time. And I started to get warts growing on my body. I mean, I was sick. I would go as far to say as I was dying, and they couldn't fix me. I went to a naturopath. The naturopath said, like, are you stressed at the moment? And I just started crying. I was like, yeah, my life's a mess. I've lost all this money. I'm in this toxic relationship. She keeps threatening to kill herself if I leave. It was just, I felt trapped. And she said, well, she's like, no medication's going to fix you. It's your life circumstances. And I thought that was really profound for a naturopath to just be like, look, I can't help you, sort your life out. So I broke up with the girl, and within about 4 weeks, my weight had come back on, my color had come back on, everything had come back on. And I wanted to get my old self back. Prior to that, I was a successful athlete. And, you know, everybody wants to do a Guinness World Record. So I went through the Guinness World Record books and I typed in my favorite exercise from being an athlete, which was it's a gymnastics exercise called a muscle up. It's where you hang off the rings and you pull yourself up so that you are then pressing yourself up above the rings. I love that exercise. So I was like, okay, I'll do something with that. And from the military, I loved like, how hard can you push me before I break? So one of the activities was 24 hours, as many ring muscle ups as you can. And I just said, yeah, I'm going to do that one. So I really signed up for that to get my old self back, just to get John back, because I lost me big time. My confidence went through the floor. You know what? I don't think I healed from that fully until probably a few weeks ago. Yeah. Ridiculous. Became a bit of a people pleaser, just because I felt so unworthy and so not good enough. And I've used a lot of coaches over the last few years, and the last one I used was like a tantric practitioner. I only just finished with her not long ago, and you know, that really helped me release a lot of shit that was holding me back. And so, I mean, not a sob story, but that's why I did the Guinness World Record. It was really just to find myself again.
What was that moment like a few weeks ago when you felt like, whew, I've healed from this?
If you could imagine, it's the same. It's kind of the same as when a car doesn't start and then you put the jumper leads on and it starts. That's what it felt like. It was like, oh, I've got life back in my body. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't alive the last few years. I've been very alive. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, it's not like I was a complete wreck, but you know, again, energy, it's like levels of voltage. You know, I was running at 10 volts when I should have been running at 100 volts. And so depending on what your belief systems are with the meridians, with the energy centers or chakras, I was blocked massively. And my life force, my prana, my mana was not running through my body. And so finally having a perspective shift, and it was a lot of letting go. I'll have you know, I had to let go of a few beliefs that weren't serving me. It was honestly like I started operating at 100 volts again. And it's not like artificial energy. You know, some people have artificial energy where they have lows and highs. It's not that. It's like a sustained, beautiful, I think it's what some people would call self-love. Like, it's just this profound, deep self-love, which is a very sustained, like, energy that people have. That's what it feels like. So yeah, it's like a car just came back to life.
I love that analogy. And how did that impact the relationships in your life?
Good, really good. It allowed me to stay in my lane. You know what? It affected my business. It's affected everything. Because instead of being influenced by other people, when someone feels not worthy, quite often they will not trust themselves. And when you don't trust yourselves, you hand your power away to outside influences. So I was handing my power away to other people's opinions. And if two people had conflicting opinions, I would be so confused because I didn't trust myself. I would go, oh, well, okay, I'll do that. Oh, but I've got to do both those things. Like, and I was so lost and confused. And so when it came to my relationships, I would say I wasn't a drag on anyone. Not that I was like a bad person, but I became more valuable to the relationship because I could give from my center, as opposed to parroting or I guess just, yeah, parroting information I'd heard. I actually was like, there's a stake in the ground. It's like, no, this is what I believe. This is who I am. And I'm going to speak to you from here. So I had a barbecue at the house on the weekend, and I noticed where people would usually say something and I wouldn't kind of like say anything. I would go in and I would say no, like I don't agree, and so it really gave me my power back in a really huge way. And you know what, there's more to go, which is exciting. And that again is that's the classroom of spiritual growth. It never ceases to amaze me.
Oh, I love that story, because I went through a similar growth, I would say. But for me, I established it as boundaries. You know, the more I loved myself, the more I could actually communicate my needs and say no, actually no, because that used to be a word that did not feature in my vocabulary. I'd be like, okay, I mean, I'm already carrying everything, but it's fine. You can put that on top as well. No, I'm like, no, but thank you.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, like that word is so powerful. My very first session, I'll never forget it, with my last coach. I had a pillow, and this was going back to that girl who, the very toxic relationship. I had to, like, one of the memories, I had to think of it, and I was just like, my boundaries were totally overstepped. And I had to yell into this pillow as loud as I can, no. I was like, no. And afterwards, I just felt so empowered, like I had taken my power back. I'll never forget it. And so that's been huge. And up on my wall here are my values, and boundaries is the third one down. It says compassion, humility, boundaries, certainty, gratitude. Compassion and humility is what I learned crying on this floor and praying to God. Boundaries is really what I learned from what you said. It's the same. It's learning to say no. Yeah, that one word can change someone's life, huh?
It can change everyone's life, right? And like you said, when you were describing how your relationships are now, you assume, especially when you come from people pleasing, or you do have that diminished sense of self-worth, that you have to say yes to everything, because then people will love you more. You're not going to aggravate anyone. No one's going to be mad, right? So there's no conflict, and you assume not having conflict is a good thing. But it's not a great thing, because if you're not having conflict with others, you're having conflict with yourself. Because if I'm not saying no to you, I'm going to be tossing and turning, thinking about how am I going to make this happen? So it's incredible. So I love that journey, and I love where you are in it. And like you say, it's always about growth, right? It's always, you never know everything. There's always going to be a challenge that comes, and you're like, now I need to learn this. But, you know, as we come to the end, John, what is real success to you? Like, how do you define that for yourself?
Do you mean your brand or in general?
I mean, you can do both. You can do like just what it is to you. It doesn't really.
Well, real success, your brand, has been life-changing for me. So grateful to be a part of it. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And there's a real family vibe amongst everyone there, which I love. You know, even when I was going through some tough times in the last few years, I would be speaking at your events, and then I would get, you know, WhatsApp messages from the crew just checking in on me and stuff. So real success, yeah, you guys are incredible, and what you do for the team is amazing, and what you bring to the public is world class. So that's what I think of you. What is real success? Tony Robbins says success without fulfillment is failure. And I agree. I'm going to try and remember what I wrote down the other day. I wrote it down. In fact, do I have 30 seconds just to quickly look at my journal?
You do.
Because I don't know if I journaled it or I just Okay, no, it's in my actual book. I wrote something along the lines of fulfillment isn't measurable. You can't measure fulfillment. And so if success is measurable, right? You've got $1 million, or you've got, you know, a bikini model for a girlfriend or whatever. Like it's like measurable, but fulfillment isn't. And success without fulfillment is not a pleasant. I've told you what happened when I hit my $1 million. It was like nothing. And so bliss, that feeling of bliss, that's real success, right? That feeling of bliss is real success. And so real success it can't be measured. Real success can't be measured because it's a feeling, and feelings can't be measured. So I wish I had my book with me, but it's real success. Real success is how good do you feel truly with yourself if no one else is around, if you know, if you were having your last few breaths on earth and there was no one around with you, would you be smiling or not? That to me is real success.
I love that. I love that definition. And the final question, John, final finisher, is what is something about John Templeton that we will not find on Google?
You really just put me on the spot here. You might find it on Google. There's two things. I was Clio Bachelor of the Year in 2012. Oh. So I was the first male cover model on the Clio magazine. But at school, I won Mr. Puniverse. So I won the Mr. Puniverse competition at school. So in our school, we all had to line up and turn on sideways and see who the skinniest was and the smallest. And I was the champion. So there you go. You won't find that. Yeah.
Winning since you were a baby. I love it. If I can find that cover, I'm going to link it in the show notes. I will try my best, everybody. John, this has been such a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I had a great time. And to everyone watching and listening, thank you for making it this far to the end. Yeah, reach out if you need anything.
Amazing. Thank you, John. I absolutely loved that conversation with John. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, be sure to check out our playlist and see some of our other phenomenal teachers. It has been an honor to serve you today, and I look forward to doing it again next week.